Good morning, community. This is not RJ, back with another video, so let's get to it. Today's random Mike Schmidt item of the day from 1988 score. Beautiful card. One of his last cards. Today's trivia question. What do Dick Allen, Reggie Jackson, Mike Schmidt, Nelson Liriano, and Dave Bergman all have in common? These 5 players all broke up ninth-inning no-hitters by Nolan Ryan. Don't feel too sorry for Ryan, though, as he ended his career with a record-setting 7 no-hitters. The first lost ninth-inning no-no came on August 7th, 1974, when Nolan Ryan, then a California Angel, yielded a one-out single to Dick Allen. In the second lost no-hitter, Ryan was no-hitting the New York Yankees through 8 1/3 innings on July 13th, 1979, when Reggie Jackson singled. Ryan's third lost no-no in the ninth came as a member of the Houston Astros on April 27, 1988, after Ryan took a 2-0 lead into the ninth inning. The Phillies' Greg Gross led off the inning by reaching base on an error. After Juan Samuel struck out, Mike Schmidt hit a 2-out single to kill the no-no, and Lance Parrish followed with a double that scored Gross and Schmidt's pinch runner, Bob Dernier. The Astros scored in the top of the 10th inning. Dave Smith pitched a perfect bottom half of the inning for the win. Ryan lost no-hitter number 4 was on April 23, 1989, courtesy of the Toronto Blue Jays' Nelson Liriano. And the Detroit Tigers' Dave Bergman is responsible for the 5th ninth-inning lost no-no, tagging Ryan for a one-out single. All of Nolan Ryan's lost ninth-inning no-hitters came with one out, and 2 of them were part of Ryan's record-tying 12 career one-hitters, a mark that matches Bob Feller's total. Hello, card community. This is Barry. This is a shout out to RJ, who recently surpassed 500 subscribers, so congratulations to RJ. RJ wants us to do a VR, and he wants us to show off a few cards of members of our favorite sports franchise who are not very well known, but who have a great story to tell. My favorite baseball franchise is the Houston Colt 45 / Houston Astros. Before I tell some stories, I'd like to shout out 4 other Astros fans. Dan over at Old Sarge Collects, Sean at Fairweather Cards, Jason at Poor Man Stack, and Sean at Sean Jedi Master. 4 channels, go check them out. The description will be listed. But my favorite team, the Houston Colt 45 / Houston Astros, began back in 1962. Here's a 1962 card of Bobby Shantz. The very first game for the Houston Colt 45s was against the Chicago Cubs, and the Astros won 11-2 behind the strong pitching of 5'6" Bobby Shantz. So Bobby Shantz won the very first game in Houston Colt 45's history, pitching a complete game. Very historical moment in the history of the Colt 45s. In that same game against the Cubs, very first game in Houston history, Bob Aspromonte was the first Astros batter, and he singled in his first at bat. So the first hit in Houston history is by Bob Aspromonte. Bob Aspromonte was also the first Astro to score a run because of the next guy. Center fielder Al Spanky Spangler followed up Aspromonte's single with a triple to score Aspromonte is the first Houston run, and Spangler hit the first RBI and the first triple in Houston history. A little later on in Houston history, another Colt 45 was Larry Dierker. Larry was signed as a 17-year-old, and his very first game with the Astros was on his 18th birthday. And he's also Houston's first 20-game winner, and he has a lot of records in Houston history. John Edwards was a great catcher for Houston. He started out with the Reds, but the Reds had Johnny Bench. But before he left the Reds, he caught a no-hitter. The Reds moved him over to St. Louis, where he was back up to Tim McCarver. But while he got to share some time with Tim McCarver, and he caught Bob Gibson. He was Bob Gibson's catcher, so during the 1968 season, when Bob Gibson had the great season, John Edwards was the catcher. And then the Cardinals moved him on to Houston. Very great defensive catcher for the Astros. A little later on, I mentioned the Astros' first pitcher ever was Bobby Shantz. Their first pitcher to pitch in a playoff game, Mr. Ken Forsch, in 1980, started Game 1 of the playoffs for the Astros, so he's the very first playoff starter for Houston. Mr. Forsch, Ken, and his brother Bob are the only brothers in Major League Baseball history to both pitch no-hitters. In 1973, Roger Metzger became the first Houston shortstop to win a Gold Glove. And then since then, no Houston shortstop had won a Gold Glove until recently. 40-something years later, Carlos Correa won, and then the next year, Jeremy Pena won. But Roger Metzger done it first for Houston, 1973. I mentioned Bob Forsch pitching a no-hitter for the Astros, 1979, and it was this guy's very second game with Houston as a catcher. He caught Bob Forsch's no-hitter for Houston, Mr. Alan Ashby, not Andy. Andy Ashby was a pitcher, but Alan Ashby, the catcher. Great catcher for the Astros. One of my all-time favorite hitters for the Astros, Mr. Jose Cruz. Many triples he hit. He's the Astros all-time triples leader with 80. Here was a guy that was a great relief pitcher for the Astros, Mr. Larry Anderson. But what he's most known for, by me at least, is he was traded for Jeff Bagwell to the Red Sox. Bagwell coming over to Houston. Larry only pitched 15 games for the Red Sox. Jeff Bagwell played 15 years for the Astros. So you have 15 games for 15 years, and Bagwell was a great Hall of Famer for the Astros. So great trade for the Astros. Not so great for the Red Sox. This guy just played one season for the Astros in 1990. But during that one season in 1990, he hit 23 home runs. great season for Mr. Franklin Stubbs. This guy is pretty well known, but not so much with the Astros. He only played with the Astros for like 30 games. And the Astros had Steve Finley in center field, so they traded away Kenny Lofton, which I hate they did. One of the greatest base stealers of all time. Matter of fact, he holds the all-time stolen base lead in the playoffs by one over Rickey Henderson. He done it in a lot more games than Rickey did, but he still got one more stolen base than Rickey Henderson in the playoffs. But he started out with the Astros. Here's a minor league card of Richard Hidalgo, a great power hitter for the Astros. In the year 2000, he hit 44 home runs, but he was kind of in the shadow of Bagwell, who hit 47. But great year in 2000, 44 home runs for Richard Hidalgo. A lot of people know this guy from the Dodgers, from the Pirates, from the Braves, but he finished his career with 1 year with the Astros. And matter of fact, his only year with the Astros is the only year he hit over 300, although it was a part of a season. Strike shortened season. He still hit over 300, was a good pinch hitter for the Astros, and was a good backup first baseman for Jeff Bagwell. Speaking of Jeff Bagwell, I didn't mention the more famous Astros of Bagwell and Biggio and Billy Wagner, the three Hall of Famers for the Astros. The Killer Bees, but another Killer Bee that kind of gets lost behind the big three there is Lance Berkman. Lance Berkman was a great player for Houston. Played all three outfield positions, backed up Bagwell some at first. When Bagwell got injured, he played first. Had a lot of great seasons with the Astros. He's mentioned with Mickey Mantle. Anytime you're mentioned in the same sense with Mickey Mantle, it's a great thing. And Mickey Mantle was the first switch hitter to hit over 40 home runs in 2 different seasons. And then Lance Berkman became the second to ever do that. 2 40-plus seasons by a switch hitter. And he went on to win the World Series with the Cardinals later on. But great player, Lance Berkman. So there's some of my Astros players that kind of get lost behind some of the bigger names, such as Bagwell, Biggio, and Billy Wagner, Nolan Ryan, some of those names. But those are some of my favorites. But once again, congratulations to RJ on 500 subscribers. Thank you for this opportunity. I appreciate anybody that's watched, and I hope everybody has a great day. My time is up, and I thank you for yours.